Hi, this is Dr. Charm coming to you today with a special report. I want to talk about medically what's going on with radio and talk show host legend Wendy Williams. Wendy Williams has really been in the news of late because she basically has not been to her show since last season. Last season she signed off and she was supposed to come back in September. The new season was supposed to start in September. I believe it's season 16. And we get news that it's going to be pushed back to October. Then October comes. And then there's a release on Wendy's Instagram saying that she had COVID-19, a breakthrough infection of COVID-19. And that was also causing some psychological issues. And she could not do the show. Her Graves' disease. And so we're getting all kinds of things. And many of us don't know what to believe. So what I want to do is break down medically what's going on with Wendy, or what's allegedly going on with Wendy. So one thing with Wendy has been extremely candid about her medical struggles. She talks about the Graves' disease. She talks about her issues with substance abuse. She's talked about her lymphedema. So I want to break down all of these things and talk about what's going on with that. So first of all, what is Graves' disease? So Wendy talks about Graves' disease. Graves' disease is a disease of the thyroid gland. So the thyroid gland is a butterfly-shaped gland that sits right here in your neck. And it looks like a butterfly. It's very, very important because it controls your body temperature, your metabolism, so our ability to process calories and things as far as maintaining our weight. So that's what metabolism does. And it also controls digestion, heart rate. So if the thyroid goes wacky, you guys, it really can cause a lot of problems. So you have two spectrums of thyroid disorder. You've got hypothyroidism, which is when the thyroid is not functioning enough. It's not doing enough. And then you have hyperthyroidism, which is linked to Graves' disease, which is where the thyroid is overactive. So let's talk about hypothyroidism. And I want to talk about hypothyroidism because there are so many women that are walking around who have thyroid disease and do not know it. We call it subclinical hypothyroidism because it might not show up on the lab, but you're having all these weird symptoms. So hypothyroidism, women are really at risk for it, especially after childbirth, because when women are pregnant, you have all these hormones just bouncing around. That's why women are so emotional when they're pregnant. You got all these hormones raging and just running around, child. And when she has the baby, all of a sudden these hormone levels just plummet. And that is what it contributes to baby blues or postpartum depression. So a lot of women will start to have symptoms of hypothyroidism after maybe they've had 1 or 2 or 3 children after children. And so the symptoms of it is depression, really cold, what we call cold intolerance. So you're in a room and everybody else is warm. They got a short set on and you sitting in here like looking for your sweater, child. That is cold intolerance. You just get cold so easily. They can have issues with slow heart rate. Constipation is a big one, and weight gain. If you have unexplained weight gain, you're eating a normal diet, you would be eating normal foods, you're not eating in all the snack cakes and stuff, and you just cannot keep your weight down, they really want to get your thyroid checked. And so one of the things the doctors can do is run what's called a TSH, which is a thyroid stimulating hormone lab. So ask your doctor to run that because that's one of the ways that you can check your thyroid. So that's the end of hypothyroidism. And how was it treated? It's basically treated with thyroid replacement hormones. So you take medication every day to help your thyroid do what it's supposed to do. But sometimes the thyroid can be under functioning because you're not getting enough iodine in your diet. And one of the classic symptoms of that is if you see the people who've got what's called a goiter, they got that swollen neck, that's a symptom. It can be a symptom of an overactive or underactive thyroid. So that is hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism can also be caused by a condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, where you have antibodies that are attacking your thyroid and it's making your thyroid not function very well. It could be under functioning. And that is also very common after childbirth. So that's hypothyroidism. So Wendy has Graves' disease. So what is Graves' disease? Graves' disease is a condition where your immune system is attacking your thyroid and it's causing it to overact. It's an overdrive. It's overdoing it. So what are the symptoms of that? The symptoms of that can mimic a lot of things. It actually can cause anxiety, irritability, insomnia, just real irritable. You don't know why, you're just going off on folks. It's not necessarily an attitude problem. It really could be an overactive thyroid. Insomnia, rapid heart rate, night sweats, just sweating for no reason. You get hot very easily. You can't tolerate any kind of a heat because you're just hot all the time. And some of the other symptoms are irregular heart rate. And that can be really dangerous because if your heart has an arrhythmia or if it's beating irregularly, that can lead to a stroke. It could lead to a heart attack. It could lead to a lot of other issues. So that's really important to get that checked. So how do you find out, like, if you have Graves' disease? Like, how do they test for that? So one of the ways they test it is a blood test. Like I was talking about TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone. So if somebody gets a test and their TSH is really, really, really low, that is an indication of an overactive thyroid, and it could be Graves' disease. They have another way of looking at it they can run a blood test and check for antibodies. And if you have antibodies against your thyroid, that will show up, and that's another sign that's confirmed in a lab. They can also do what's called a radioactive iodine uptake study. So that's where they give you some iodine, and it will show how much your thyroid is taking up. And if it's overdoing it, if it's taking up a lot and it's overdoing it, then that will show you that you have an overactive thyroid. So that gets real technical. A specialist is one that's really going to do that. But really, you can do it by the blood test. They can also do imaging. So if they do a CT scan, they do an ultrasound and see that the thyroid is not looking like it's supposed to, that's going to be another sign. So the doctor is really going to put all of this together for a diagnosis. But really, you as the patient should look at, man, I'm irritable. My heart's beating really fast. I can't sleep. I'm sweating a lot, and that can really mimic anxiety. So before you go over to the psychiatrist and the psychotherapist, go to your family doctor and make sure that you get your thyroid hormones and everything checked. And as a matter of rule, women, you should get your thyroid checked every year, especially as you get older. Everyone should, but again, especially women. So Wendy I just have an opinion about her and the Graves' disease because she has blamed Graves' disease for everything. When she fell out, when she was dressed as the Statue of Liberty back 3-4 years ago and she collapsed and fainted and everything, she blamed it on Graves' disease. It is highly unlikely that Graves' disease would cause you to be faint like that, especially because she's under treatment. She's been under treatment for her Graves for a long time. One of the other things I left out about Graves' disease is that it can cause a condition called exophthalmos, and that's where your eyes just bug out like that. And that's one of the reasons why Wendy's eyes kind of bulge like that, and that's one of the signs of Graves' disease. So I think she's kind of blaming everything on Graves' disease when it really could be other things that's going on. And there had been rumors with her staff and other people that she was drinking. I mean, she actually did go to a sober house, so it's really not even rumors. She was in a sober house. Wendy had a problem with cocaine for many years. I read her autobiography, and she talked about that she did cocaine, she did crack. But now, what always struck me, and especially in addiction medicine, is that Wendy was a recovering addict from drugs, but she was still drinking alcohol. And in many schools of thought, if you have an addictive personality and you get addicted to things, you should leave all of the intoxicants alone. No alcohol either. And so I think what happens is she transferred the cocaine addiction. And when she started to have these issues in her life with her husband and the mistress, because her husband had a baby with the mistress and he had a mistress for over 10 years, I think Wendy started to drink heavily. And if you have what's called an addictive personality, where you do not deal with psychologically the issues that you have and you use something else as a tool to not have to deal with the pain, it could be food, it could be drugs, it could be alcohol. But if a person has these signs and symptoms of an addictive personality, she really should have gone straight to therapy, but instead she started abusing the alcohol, and we get to the position where she's fainting as the Statue of Liberty. I don't think it was Graves' disease. But I want to talk about, because initially they said that she had a breakthrough COVID infection, and and this is why she couldn't do the show. She's not in the frame of mind to do the show. Because eventually what I want to lead to is, why are they saying Wendy has dementia? So the Graves' disease is really not going to give you memory loss or memory problems or anything that's leading up to dementia. Now, COVID-19, what is a breakthrough infection? Wendy had a breakthrough infection, meaning that she was vaccinated against COVID-19, or against coronavirus, and she still got sick anyways. And so that is one of the risks of the vaccinated. Vaccinated people can still test positive and become infected with COVID and coronavirus and have COVID-19. But she had a breakthrough infection, and they're saying that this is why she could not do the show. There is some truth in this, because everybody has heard of the respiratory symptoms of COVID-19, but COVID-19 can cause neurological symptoms. So the respiratory symptoms of COVID-19, loss of taste or smell, cough, you get the flu-like symptoms. It can cause the body ache, so it feels like the flu, but it can be worse. It can move down to the lungs, and it can cause bronchitis and pneumonia, which is where people are going on these vents, and they're going on they get intubated on the breathing machines and everything. And this is where there's a high risk of death, because they're on a ventilator and they can't breathe on their own. But there are people who recover from COVID, and they still are what we call the COVID long haulers, where they still have symptoms up to 6 months, up to a year after they have recovered from COVID infection. They are testing negative. They're no longer testing positive. And some of those neurological symptoms are, they could actually have depression. They can have difficulty concentrating. There can be psychological symptoms from having COVID. So there's some truth to that. Perhaps Wendy had COVID, and perhaps Wendy started to have some major psychological symptoms from being a COVID long hauler. I can't speculate. I'm not her doctor, but there's some truth into that. The other possibility, which I think is a real possibility, is that Wendy may have alcohol-induced dementia. So what is dementia? Dementia is memory loss. It's memory loss, difficulty concentrating, not being able to form a plan. It can get so severe where people don't know what day it is, what year it is, not being able to recognize loved ones. And it is progressively worse as people get older. But people can get it. Wendy is like 56 or 57. People can get it in that age. People can get it younger than that. And when we say alcohol-induced, so what it is that if somebody has been abusing alcohol for years and years, or just drinking very heavily, it can cause memory problems. Every time you take a drink of alcohol, it actually kills brain cells. So Wendy could have been abusing alcohol to the point where she has become demented. Is suffering from dementia, and this is a very, very real thing. And why has she been in the news this week? Well, 2 reasons. Her show has been having rotating guest hosts. I think Fat Joe and Remy Ma, Sherry Shepherd has been one of the hosts. There's been just a litany of hosts rotating in and out, and the audience is not like that. And one of the people who has done really well as a guest host has been Sherry Shepherd. Sherry Shepherd is a comedian. She's been on The View for many years before she was let go from The View. And she's done really well. And so she is in negotiations right now to become the permanent guest host of the Wendy Williams show. And if Wendy is not ready to come back by September, then they're going to cancel Wendy's show or not renew her contract and give Sherry her own show. And so because Wendy she was extended all the way until this season, and this is actually the end of her contract. She was set to renew her contract. So this is a dangerous time to not be able to do your show, especially when you've got competition waiting in the wings, waiting to take that audience. So the other reason Wendy has been in the news this week is because she is suing her bank, Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is managing her investments. They're managing her liquid assets, and they have frozen her accounts because they said that she is incapacitated. They are concerned about financial abuse, and she can't pay her bills. She's not able to pay her mortgage. She has an emergency lawsuit going on right now, and now it's even come up as of this morning that they believe that she needs a guardian. And what is a guardian? A guardian is basically someone who's court appointed, because court appointed or is assigned by a court of law to take care of legal affairs and make decisions for someone who has a medical condition or a psychological condition or psychiatric condition to where they cannot make their own decisions. So her bankers are now saying that for whatever reason, Wendy is incapacitated. They're saying this is coming not only from them firsthand, but from third parties. And they're saying that she can't make her own decisions. The court needs to appoint her a guardian. She is ripe to be financially abused. Unfortunately, when people suffer from dementia, and this goes, you would really have to look at elderly people and people who are living alone, and there are these family dynamics that go on. They really can be abused. They can be financially abused. Not able to access their checkbooks, not able to access their bills, people draining their bank accounts, taking money, the crackhead uncles over here stealing from them. So anytime people do not have their full mental capacity for whatever reason, they are ripe to be abused. And so we'll see what happens, what plays out in the media, but I really wanted to break down what was going on with Wendy Williams and her health and how that can affect what's going on with her in her future. And so I hope we can take a little nugget from this. Ladies, get your thyroids checked. If you have issues with substance abuse, or if there's an emotional thing that's driving you to want to eat or drink or do drugs, there is help out there. The National Alliance for Mental Illness is one of the organizations that links people for mental health help. And I'm a really big fan of mental health therapy. People, there has been a huge stigma about getting help, especially in the Black community. But I think now it's really starting to open up. But just think about it. If you have a heart problem, you go to the cardiologist. If you broke a bone, you go to the orthopedist. Well, if you're having issues with your mind, you go to someone who that's their specialty. And that is a counselor, a psychologist. So I really hope that Wendy could come back. I absolutely love her. She really has a gift. I just really hope that she gets back into that purple chair, because I followed her since her radio days and I was so excited when she got a show. And I really hope she gets well. Get well, Wendy. So this has been Dr. Charm. I love y'all. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Dr. Charm. Thank you so much for tuning in.